How's it going, friends, and welcome back to the channel. So before we jump into this video, myself and James from LPJ Models have set up a new Facebook group, and we'd like to invite you guys to that group. The group is called Glue Sniffers. This Facebook group is pretty much the same as any other Facebook group. You can post your models, you know, your work in progresses, ask for advice, give advice, and you know, the usual thing. But the one thing that we really want to do with this group, and a lot of groups don't always like to do this, but we really want to push for this, is for you guys to come over and basically promote yourself. Now, this is whether you've got a channel, a Facebook page, Instagram page, or even if you have a small business, or even if it's a big business. If it is a big business, you're probably not going to be watching this, because why would you? I'm too small and obscure. But we'd like to, you know, invite you all over, or even if you know somebody that has any of these, there is a link in the description down below. And again, we want to invite all you guys over. And again, if you just want to just join, see what the people are posting, post some stuff yourself. But what we really want to push is basically self-promotion, is what we would really like to do with this page. So again, like I said, there's a link in the description down below, and we like to see and hope to see you guys over there. So on to this video, and I have absolutely no idea what was going on with this one, but it was just a little bit of fun. Basically, I was doing a commission. It was the F6F Hellcat from Edard. The kit came with a second fuselage, and I thought, well, I'll keep hold of this because I might be able to either use it for some, probably most likely just trying bits and pieces out before I put it onto an actual model I'm working on. But then I remembered I got all these thousands of spare bits and bobs that I accumulated over the last couple of years that I've been saving for a rainy day. Didn't know why, but I thought I'd save them just in case. And I decided, well, I've got this body, let's just throw something together and see what happens. So that's literally what I have done, and that's basically what we're going to be looking at in this video. I've named this sort of maggrav vehicle thing Blackjack, for the same as this build, no real reason whatsoever. So it's just one of those things, you know, something comes in your head and you go, yeah, that will do. So anyway, let's get into the video. So before we do that, grab yourself a brew and a bricky, and let's jump straight to it. So for the basis of this model, I'm using a fuselage from the F6F from Edard. This was actually within the box of the commission I did previously for a customer. And it come with two fuselages, and so I thought, well, I'll keep it because I just don't know, you know. I thought, well, I could use it as like maybe a scrap piece to, you know, test some stuff out, but then I have got one of those. So I thought, well, revisit kind of an old project I did a few years back where I made like one of these Mad Max type cars using, fun enough, the same body I had from I was given previously. So I'm trying to figure out with this what I'm going to do. Literally all this is, you know, being flung together as I sort of looked at it. So I was trying to figure out whether, you know, do I want to cut the entire tail off, or you know, just a section where the tailplane should be, you know, and how's this going to be powered, because I'd still got a you know, nose part from it, the nose cowling. So I thought, well, we could still keep this kind of aircrafty and make this sort of like as a kind of maybe very large air intake. But pretty much the entirety of this project is quite literally looking at what bits and bobs I've got and just trying it on the model and see what happens. So because I've got no spare engines at all kicking about, because of course most kits come with just the one engine, so I decided to go with the sort of intake idea, which meant cutting this mounting for where the engine should have gone on the original model. Once I finished butchering that up, I put the nose cowling on, because I knew I'm going to have to try and attempt to fill some of this in to attempt to smooth it out. I sort of pencil drew a rough idea of how I wanted the intake to look, and of course that's to sort of incorporate where that hole was initially. In the hindsight, in the end, I probably really didn't want to make this intake as big as I did, but it was big and it was very unnecessary. Now, even though the intake was going to be pretty dark anyway, but I still felt like I needed to sort of bulk it out and add something in there, I used two German bombs from an Airfix kit. Obviously I never put them together. I just stuck them across the sides and the bottom, leaving the tail fins on, because I felt like that added sort of some, I don't know, some aerodynamicy into into the intake. You can see there I've added a bit of plasticard to make it look like it funnels it somewhere, and attempted to sort of smooth it out with some green stuff. It doesn't look great, and to be honest with you, in the end it didn't look any better really. The fan blades I've used off a Focke-Wulf 490, nose cone off a Mark 1 Spit, and the outer rim is actually off the centre sprue part of some clear parts, which made really good frame for it, which later on just got stuck in. I thought I was going to have the same issue with the cockpit, but fortunately after doing a commission on a Focke-Wulf 190, I actually had some cockpit tubs from that. They actually come with 3, so I had 1 spare. I wasn't sure if this was actually going to fit, but it actually fits. It's actually smaller than the fuselage, so I've had to sort of bodge something together to make it fit. I thought it was going to have also the same problem with the seat, but fortunately, or unfortunately, I've had to do that many Spitfires recently. I got one of those seats kicking around, and the same with the seat belts. I had some of those spare. So like I said, the cockpit tub was a little bit too narrow for the fuselage. So again, with a bit of plasticard, I made a little frame for it to sit on. All I had to do then was trying to figure out where the centre of the cockpit was and attempt to line it up with the fuselage, so when the other side goes in, it looks perfect. So as I was trying to sort of figure out how this thing was going to be sort of powered, I was sort of thinking along the lines of sort of maggrav type sort of thing, even though it's got like jet engine. So the 2 sort of exhaust engine things there, I've used a couple of bombs, sort of the fairings from the back of a bomb, and 2 sort of front sections from some German sort of general purpose bombs. As you can see, I've also got a couple of drop tanks on there. So the ones that are on the side I'm actually going to use as sort of like weapons packs, and I've used this spare bit of Jagdpanther fending, as well as some of the sort of mounting brackets I got, as well as some of the little nuts and bolt heads that they got. So I stuck all those on. So you see, one of the great things that I like about doing these things, and I don't do them very often, is that none of this actually has to really make any sense whatsoever. So it makes it a lot easier to just sort of see bits and just put them onto the model and sort of see how it fits. Bit like this, again, drop tank is a German 109 drop tank, which I've used as sort of the sort of rear exhaust pipe. As I said, still none of this is really making any sense to me and how it's supposed to work, but as long as it looks alright, it looks good, and to be fair, at the end of the day, it's as long as you're having some fun with it, that's kind of all that really matters. So to try and break up a little bit more of the profile of the main aircraft, I've used some clear parts from Mark 5. These are going to be sort of basically front headlights with a snazzy little bit of fendering running off the back. I've used 2 109 filters, which had to make a bit of a hole in the fuselage to actually get them to fit a little bit more snugly and make they look sort of like they're supposed to be there. As you can see there, I'll put a bit of sort of armour plating at the back of the seat. Literally the only probably bit of DIY I really did on this model was make a couple of grab handles for on the side of the cockpit, which I just used some fuse wire and used my bending tool just to make a nice simple little clamp. Now if you want to make something like this, I'm calling it a clamp, I've just said it's a handle, grab handle. If you want to make something like this, you can quite easily use something like a pair of pliers and just bend them round, as long as you get them to sort of, you know, the right looking sort of size for the model. So as we get further on, I have realised, unfortunately, I've missed a few bits, or lost a few bits, or haven't filmed a few bits that I've done. So as you can see the feet there, I've used two German bomb racks for fighters, some spare, again, Focke-Wulf 190 undercarriage parts for there. Also there was some 190 gun barrels, again spare, so I'll use those as well. But before we go to paint, I've, as you can see, sort of made a DIY mask for the canopy, which I'll fill in with some liquid mask. And for all the metal parts, all the brass parts, I've used some Mr. Hobby's metal primer, just to help the paint stick to those parts, and also, you know, make them that little bit more durable. Now I'd also realised I hadn't filmed any of me sculpting the nose section of this vehicle, which I used green stuff for. Probably the reason I didn't film it is because I spent so long trying to get it to sort of shape and form. On the inside, it looks better on the outside than it does on the inside. It's very messy, and I'm not very good at sculpting yet, but it will do. So once it's primed and made sure that everything was sort of all uniform and looked relatively tidy, I could then move on to the painting. So I couldn't really figure out what sort of colour scheme I wanted to do this, let alone sort of an original colour scheme, because most of the stuff I have is very military. So I went for the same sort of colours as I did the Hellcat for the customer, which was in the sort of two-tone blue and well, it was just two-tone blue. I stuck with that. I was going to do the white, but then at the last minute decided I didn't really want to do that. I pretty much did it in the same fashion, whereas I used Tamiya's light blue for this, which was XF23. I added a little bit of white in there, just to sort of fade the panels, because I want this to look, you know, really, you know, worn and battered. For the top, I used Sea Blue, which was XF17. I did exactly the same as I did on the lower half of the body of the vehicle, but instead of case of adding white, I actually used the previous XF23 and added this nice sort of little wavy you know, tide line, just again to try attempt to make something look you know, a little bit more interesting instead of the solid line, and make it look too close to, you know, the Hellcat. When we come to the exhaust itself, I didn't do a very good job of this. I tried to make it look like a proper engine and sort of the burning, so I used some iron, dark iron for sort of the ribbing, and then some like metallic blue, and I wasn't really happy with it. It didn't look good at all, so later on I just slapped a load of that dark iron, and actually in the end made it look alright. So again, trying to add a little bit more flair to it, and again, it's going to make it look really, really battered. I've put 2 to 3 layers of MIGS chipping fluid down, and then I've used some flat red XF7 for this. It was a bit too dark, so I added a bit of white into it, and it was a bit too thick, so this took me quite a while to attempt to ebb this off, which we'll see in a minute. I also should have masked off a little bit further, or actually just paid more attention to my spray. As you can see, there was, particularly on this side, some extremely heavy overspray, which I managed to fortunately go over with the previous colours and managed to blend it all in and make it look like it never had happened. Now, like I said, I went too heavy with this top coat, so it made it very difficult for this whole thing to, the chipping solution to work properly. I absolutely plastered it in water and spent quite a long time trying to get it to chip. I mean, most of the time, if you put a nice thin layer on, it will pretty much just come off in small little chunks and chips. So like I said, I put it on too thick, so I needed a little bit of extra help with this, so I used a cocktail stick just to sort of have a little bit of a go of it and try and remove some of this top layer of paint. Eventually, after some persistence, I actually managed to get it to look exactly the way I wanted it. And again, I want this kind of, quite heavily worn, chipped look. I did exactly the same on these gun packs. Decided to go with a nice bright black and yellow striping. And this works exactly the way it should have done. I'd put a couple of coats of the chipping fluid down and a nice thin layer of black over the top, and as you can see, with just some simple tap water, and this is a relatively soft brush, and as you can see, it's just flaking away, leaving some really realistic chips. I'd actually done the same with the bottom layer, but that seemed to not want to sort of really react with it, so again I got the cocktail stick, but this also gives us some nice scratches and really good worn looking look. As we move on to decals, I rated the decal box I got, and one of the things actually I got quite abundance of was RAF Randalls. I was actually going to use the Americans Star and Bar for this, but because of those intakes, it got in the way, and I didn't want to attempt to try and fiddle around cutting them out. So again, from another Spitfire I did, I'd got a couple of good roundels. Considering I'd used the right ones when I previously made the kit for the top wing surface, for some reason, the ones I've ended up using seem to be two different sizes. But to be honest with you, again, on the other side, it actually worked quite well. Now, these ones are the newer Edard type decals with a carrier film over the top. You can remove this carrier film. It's quite a delicate process, and with previous ones that I've done recently, I've had very mixed results with doing these, trying to remove the carrier film. Now, the conclusion that I've come to is that when you're putting these decals down, you need to make sure you got every ounce of fluid underneath these decals out as possible. So using something like a cotton bud or a Q-tip to remove that, I think has helped quite a lot, because the results I had with this one were a lot better. All I then did was get a bit of masking tape, put it over the top of the decal, and just very gently pulled it back, and you sort of get like this sort of skin layer come away, and all you need to do is just sort of pick at it and pull it away. And again, raiding all my decals, I got a load from a Mustang, and I got loads of these little sort of information sort of decals of where sort of oil and water and fuel are supposed to go, and sort of put them in areas that kind of sort of made sense and worked along with the decal. And I thought actually in the end, particularly this sort of area, actually I was really chuffed with, and thought it looked really cool. I also found a piece of nose art, which was actually again from the Hellcat build, and I thought this was quite a nice little thing to put on the front. Nice little bit of nose art. And again, like I said, we're doing these sort of builds, nothing really needs to make any sort of form of sense. So, particularly when it comes to sort of your markings, you can add any sort of, bits and bobs that you got lying around, like these SO badges I got from a previous kit. Again, it's a Spitfire. I've got to stop doing Spitfires. It's just getting too much for me. I just can't take it anymore. So again, going back to the Edard decals. This is how I removed that carrier film. I'd left it for a few days just to make sure that it was all dry and it didn't peel too much of the decal off. When it come down to the weathering, most of this was the my usual weathering, using Tamiya's brown panel liner, just to emphasize all those panels and make it look a little bit more grimy. I also applied the same sort of chipping as I do to most of my aircraft. I used the sponge chipping across the areas that look like they're going to get the most wear. So on this case, it's going to be across that fender, which would be like the walkway. And then coming in again with a brush, join up some of the dots to make some of the scratches and make them look a little bit bigger, and also add in a few sort of random scratches on areas that look like they're gonna, most likely get chipped. So I want to do something a little bit different and add some sort of dirt streaking from the sides of the panels that run down the side of the aircraft. So I didn't want to use the same brown panel liner as before. So what I did was I added a little bit of a black panel liner, exactly again the same from Tamiya, and it was almost relatively a 50-50 mix. I probably added a little bit more black because that brown actually takes quite a lot to sort of get it to go a darker colour. So I did a few dots and dashes down the sides of these panels for this sort of dirt build-up accumulation that sort of started to streak within the airflow. I let it dry off just a little bit and then come in with some enamel thinners and then basically streaked it down the side of the model. I also found a sort of forward backwards motion when I'm trying to sort of not so much remove it, it's kind of more forcing it into a sort of singular area. I found with Tamiya's panel liner is that it doesn't necessarily want to be picked up with the thinner, it just tends to sort of spread about. So I found like this forward and backwards motion gave us a nice, relatively as thin a streak as you like it. And at the ends, what you can, if you want to do, is just feather them off and just basically try and sort of wick some of that excess away. I also added a few rust tones on the metal sort of armour plating on the back using some AK's rust streaking effect. I'm also using a new product on this that I haven't really used before. I'm using 502 Abteilung's engine grease, and I'm using this as sort of some sort of oil fuel type stains here and there across the model. I thinned it out with some universal thinners, and again exactly the same as I did them streaks down the sides. Do some forward and backward motion to sort of thin out these oil streaks and make them look as sort of realistic as possible. And I actually found that it's a great product to use. It works really well, particularly with the universal thinner, and gives, I think, an absolute sort of amazing and sort of realistic looking oil grease fuel stains. And the last effect to add was some gun smoke residue. I used Stardust pigments for this, and it is soot, or it's called soot, and it looks like soot. It's a nice. I thought this would be a nice little effect, to make it look like those weapons have been fired quite a bit. And I think it definitely sort of sells that notion that these weapons have been quite well used. Okay guys, so we're nearly there. I'm nearly ready to show you this finish. I was going to say masterpiece, but this weird piece of junk I've thrown together with a load of spare parts. I hope you have enjoyed the video. If you have, and you haven't done so already, consider giving the video a like and subscribing to the channel. If you'd also like to help support the channel, there are links in the description down below. Also talking about links in the description down below. Don't forget the Facebook group that James from LPJ Models and myself has set up for, you know, just for you guys to join. Again, just to post your stuff, but also to self-promote. So again, like I said, whether that's your channel, Facebook, Instagram, maybe even blogs or vlogs or whatever you've got. Businesses, again, we like to have those guys over as well. And if that's not you, but you know somebody that has, pass it on, and it might be of some interest. At the moment, it is a small group. We're hoping to have this as a massive, thriving community where you can share your stuff and share tips and whatever, and again, as well as yourself in general. So, guys, thanks ever so much for watching, and again, I hope you have enjoyed. And here's the finished model.